Donald Trump is not a normal political figure. He forces a harder question than most leaders ever do. Not whether you like him, not whether you agree with him, but whether he is fundamentally incompetent or operating with a kind of brutal, unconventional intelligence that most people refuse to recognize. On the surface, the case against him looks obvious. He speaks aggressively, often impulsively. He exaggerates, contradicts himself, insults allies, and reduces complex global situations into blunt, primitive language. He sounds emotional, reactive, even childish. That is why millions conclude this man is a fool, a loud, arrogant, aging ego that stumbled into power. But that explanation breaks the moment you look at his impact. Fools do not reshape entire political systems. They do not dominate global attention for nearly a decade. They do not return to power after being declared finished, especially at a moment of global fracture, debt exhaustion, institutional distrust, and war. Trump does. And that is where the real question begins. If he were truly stupid, he would have collapsed under pressure long ago. Truly stupid men do not keep bending the political field around themselves for this long. They do not survive repeated institutional assaults. They do not split nations, redefine party identities, disrupt alliances, and reappear stronger after being declared politically dead. A fool may create one wave of chaos. He does not become a recurring historical force. That is the part many people avoid confronting. The idiot label explains his vulgarity, but not his effect. It explains the clownishness, but not the staying power. Systems do not fear fools for this long. They either absorb them or watch them collapse. The fact that Trump keeps forcing the system into stress tells you something else is happening. So either the world's institutions are weaker than we thought, or Trump is more dangerous than people are willing to admit. What if Trump is not a polished strategist, but a man with a brutal, intuitive intelligence? What if he sees certain truths about power, empire, decline, and public psychology more clearly than the people who mock him? The real divide is not between smart and stupid in the traditional sense. The real divide is between people who assume the current order can still be preserved, and people who assume it cannot. Trump behaves like a man in the second category. He does not act like a manager of stability. He acts like a man who believes stability is mostly an illusion, that the old structure is rotten, that diplomatic language has become empty performance, and that the coming era belongs not to refined administrators, but to ruthless repositioners. This is why his moves often look irrational to conventional observers. They judge him by the logic of system maintenance. But what if he operates by the logic of system transition? Take the Iran situation. From a traditional perspective, escalation makes no sense. Iran is geographically difficult, strategically complex, and globally risky. It threatens oil routes, financial markets, and alliance cohesion. A conventional strategist calls escalation reckless. But what if Trump is not trying to preserve the old world order? What if he believes the post-Cold War system of American management, debt expansion, military overstretch, and subsidized allies is already exhausted? Then escalation, while brutal, serves another function, a tool of forced rearrangement, a way to shift the center of gravity back toward hard resources, energy control, and fortress economics. That is the darker reading. Not that he wants order, but is too foolish to preserve it. But that he may actually believe disorder is the mechanism through which a new order must emerge. That is not diplomacy. That is controlled disruption. And that is where he becomes dangerous in a different way. The question is no longer, is he reckless? But is he deliberately reckless? Is the chaos a mistake or a method? Trump also understands something many polished globalists refuse to admit. The American empire in its old form was becoming too expensive, too hollow, and too detached from ordinary Americans. A nation cannot remain the world's consumer of last resort, security guarantor, and reserve currency center, while hollowing out manufacturing and dissolving internal cohesion. Millions do not support him because they believe he is morally refined. They support him because they believe he recognizes the scam, that America has been turned into a machine that enriches certain classes while weakening the broader national body. Whether he is right in every detail is secondary. The power lies in the perception that he identifies the rot. His strongest faculty is not technical governance. It is battlefield psychology. He knows how to dominate attention, bait institutions into overreaction, and turn hostility into fuel. In the modern media environment, attention is not a byproduct of power. It is power. Refined opponents miscalculate him because they assume the old rules still govern the arena. He operates as if the arena has already changed. The fatal risk inside the arrogant genius interpretation is this: destruction is easier than reconstruction. Trump may correctly sense that the old system is exhausted. He may correctly identify its contradictions. But sensing decay is not the same as building a viable replacement. A real genius of statecraft does not only break, he builds. He leaves structure where chaos once stood. Trump has shown he can mobilize energy, grievance, and force. But can he turn nationalism into competence? Resentment into productivity? That is where the myth meets the test of history. And arrogance can blind. It can cause a leader to confuse attention with legitimacy, force with strategy, and intuition with omniscience. Trump's confidence allows him to act where others hesitate, but it may also prevent him from seeing where he overreaches. Now we reach the most uncomfortable layer. Trump operates with almost no visible morality in the traditional sense. He frames everything through power, winning, dominance, leverage. That absence of moral constraint makes him effective to some and terrifying to others. A leader without moral limitation can move faster, but also destroy far more. So ask yourself, if Trump disappeared tomorrow, would the direction of the world actually change? Would conflict stop? Would the system become stable again? Or would everything continue, just with a different face at the top? Because if everything continues, then Trump is not the cause. He is a symptom. Or worse, he is a tool. That is the most unsettling possibility. That Trump is not designing the collapse, but is being placed inside it. Used as the figure who can push what others cannot. A man whose personality allows him to do things that more controlled leaders would never attempt. His arrogance becomes functional because only someone arrogant, shameless, and detached enough from morality could carry out actions that destabilize an entire system. That is not a compliment. That is a warning. If the plan continues without him, then the man is not the plan. He is the face of it. The truth may be that Trump is neither. He may be something more historically common and more unsettling. A man of intense instinct, rising in an age that rewards instinct more than refinement. A transition figure, a breaker. A man whose strengths and flaws are fused so tightly you cannot separate them. His vulgarity is part of his power. His ego is part of his utility. His recklessness is part of his relevance. The traits that make him look unpresidential may be the traits that allow him to function when the old presidency itself has lost legitimacy. Calling him an idiot is too weak. Calling him a genius is too neat. He is more dangerous than an idiot and less elegant than a genius. He may see the collapse more clearly than his critics, but be too driven by ego to manage its consequences wisely. He may understand the old world is ending and even try to accelerate its end to reposition America for what comes next. But whether that makes him a savior, a saboteur, or simply an old empire's final wrecking force is still unresolved. And maybe that is the real answer. Trump's power comes from forcing the world to confront a possibility it does not want to face. That what looks like chaos may not be accidental, and that what sounds like stupidity may sometimes be the rough language of an intelligence operating through destruction. So, what is he? A stupid idiot? An arrogant genius? Or something more dangerous than either label allows? A man who senses the age better than the system does. Too flawed to trust completely, but too consequential to dismiss. A wrecking ball with instinct. A loud old man who may actually understand that the world we knew is already finished. And if that is true, the question is no longer whether Trump is offensive or arrogant. The real question is whether he is merely reacting to collapse, or whether he is one of the men chosen by history to force it. That is why the world still cannot decide whether it is looking at a fool, or at a man ruthless enough to break an order everyone else was too afraid to admit was already dying.